Bible hates women, and it's time we talk about it. I never read the Bible growing up, and it's clear that several Christians are in that same predicament. So it's no surprise that women, and lots of them, are followers of this religion. Because once you do read the Bible, once you crack it open, it is hard to unsee the treatment, the maltreatment, the patriarchy, the misogyny that is riddled from cover to cover. The Bible is full of shaming for women, violence against women, sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual violence against women, killing women, stoning them, women and children alike, selling them. Virginity is seen as a commodity. Women are property. They could be bought and sold in exchange for labor. As a woman, how can you read this book, see the characteristics of a God like this, and still decide to worship it? As a woman, how can you claim to decenter men, but this man, Jesus, and his father, God, the two in one, whatever you want to say, is at the center of your life? How do you hate yourself and put him first? In this video, I'll go over several examples in the Bible where women are treated as essentially nothing. There's no rights, there's no consent. They are second class, I was gonna say citizens, but I mean, they're just there. They're story fillers, if you will. I'll also point out the comparisons between how women are treated for an act versus how men are treated for that same similar act or lesser, or how women are treated just for merely existing. As always, I have my notes here, so let's get into it. Let's just start from the beginning. In the beginning, creation story number 2, where Adam and Eve are introduced to the tale. First of all, Eve is just a woman. She has no name until later on, I believe in chapter 3, where Adam actually calls her Eve. So she's just some woman, and she's an afterthought. God creates this man, Adam is what he calls him. He creates this man out of the clay. He puts him in the Garden of Eden for the sole purpose of tilling the land. Now, he gives him these instructions. We all know the story. Don't eat from this tree. You can eat from every other tree. So then God goes, it's not right for this man to be alone. He needs a helper. So he creates animals in this second tale because the orders are off from the first tale, the first creation story. So he creates animals to be this man's helper. Then he goes, something's still not right. He puts the man to sleep, grabs a rib, closes him up, and creates a woman. This woman is just magically his wife. Keep that in mind, because I'm going to get back to this whole husband-wife notion in the Bible. So this woman with the same DNA, but instead of an XY, she has an XX somehow, is this man's wife, right? Genetically similar, I suppose, but maybe I'm thinking too scientifically and too critically about this. Moving on. So this woman is now a more suitable helper for the man. That is her purpose. She is to be ruled over by her husband. So fast forward to her meeting this serpent and being told that she in fact will not die if she eats from that fruit, right? So she goes ahead, eats from the fruit, shares it with her husband. Mind you, this is not a caution or an instruction or a warning that she was given. The way the story goes, God told Adam and Adam alone, because Eve wasn't even made at this point. So God told Adam not to eat from this tree. I guess we have to assume that Adam passed the word along, or because she's part of his DNA, it's just ingrained in her to have known that warning. Anyways, she is the blame. When this story is brought up later on in the Bible, it's always taught that Eve is the one to blame for the downfall of humanity. Now, aside from that, it's very clear that throughout the Bible, women are just deemed as property. Women are primarily seen as property, especially in the Old Testament, and especially when it comes to marriage. So as I said, Eve came from this man's rib, and just because of that fact is his wife. Now, elsewhere throughout the Bible, people become wives just by sleeping with and knowing this person. There is no ceremony. There is no till death do us part, and in sickness and in health, and equal, nothing. These people are not, women and men are not seen as equal. In fact, women are seen as property. A woman first belongs to her father, is the property of her father, until he passes her off or sells her to a man to be that man's wife. This man can have as many wives as he may like. Not only were women not seen as humans and instead considered property, they themselves couldn't even own property if there was a male heir to inherit it. Also in Genesis, we're introduced to the character Hagar, or Hagar. I don't know how to pronounce it. I actually knew somebody with this name. She pronounced it Hagar, but a lot of people say Hagar. So this is Abram's mistress, who gives him his first son, his first child, at the age of 86 or 89 or something like that. And this child is called Ishmael. So Hagar is the Egyptian servant, and Abram's wife Sarai at the time is her mistress. So at one point after she gives birth to Ishmael, she's treated harshly by her mistress and escapes. And the angel of the Lord, which also I'm never ever sure if that's like supposed to be the Lord or just a separate entity from the Lord. Either way, the angel of the Lord finds Hagar and her son and tells her, hey, just go back to your mistress and submit to her. Red flag, ding, 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 ding. Like, why are you telling them to go back to a place where she was treated horribly? Matter of fact, before she had Ishmael, Lord, or the angel of the Lord, told her, yes, you're going to have a son, you're going to give Abram a son, and in fact, this son of yours is going to be hated. Talk about no consent, talk about no free will. Like, what if I don't want to bear a child that you already have told me is going to be hated by the world? Another story of how women are treated like shit in the Bible is one, a lot of them don't even have names. A lot of them are just a title. Again, their attachment to some man. They're the supporting cast member of this lead character's story. So, for example, Lot. Lot, we know, has daughters, 2 of them, and we know he has a wife, and that's all we know. Lot's daughter, Lot's wife. Lot's wife is killed by the Lord, or by God, just for looking back at the city as Sodom and Gomorrah is being destroyed by the Lord. She looks back and instantly is turned to a pillar of salt. There goes her life. You know, you can say, oh, because she disobeyed God. But look at how her disobeying God, mind you, there's no warning in the story of Genesis 19 where God says, don't look back. But she looks back and quote, quote, is disobeying God. But didn't Jonah disobey God by not going to Nineveh the first time around? And guess what happened to him? He got a second chance. And then speaking of Lot's supporting cast members, his daughters are offered up to be gang raped by the townsmen. Lot protects this angel, and I'll get into that too because angels are also depicted as males. He protects his angel visitor, the stranger that comes to his house, and was like, you know what, fellas, guess what? My daughters are inside. If you want something to smash, go get them. Okay? Leave this man alone. They're available. Not to mention in Exodus 21 where the selling of daughters is allowed. Selling your daughters into servitude or slavery is quite honestly a law or permissible. And we see this in Genesis 29, the story of Rachel and Leah being used as compensation in exchange for labor. Another story where the woman is a supporting cast member. Actually, she's like the extra. She's like the background actor in this character's story is Job. Job and his wife, who again doesn't have the decency of having an identity outside of that. She doesn't have a name. Job's wife lost 10 children and all her shit. For what? Job was a righteous man, and we always talk about how Job lost this and got double for his trouble. But we don't ever talk about his wife's POV. This wife who bore those 10 children, lost all 10 of those children, and then had to bear 10 more. In fact, we don't even know if it was her who gave Job those 10 other children, or God just snapped a finger, or God found another woman for Job, or we don't know the details. But let's say it was his wife who had to bear 10 more children. She was already cursed with painful childbirth thanks to Eve, apparently. Or thanks to God, really. No one cares. No one even thinks about it from that point of view. The story in Judges 19 is extremely, extremely disturbing to me. It's a story of gang rape, murder, and dismembering of a woman's body. A concubine is gang raped, and her body is sliced up into 12 pieces and delivered to each of the different tribes of Israel. Now here's another very disturbing story. It's another one where this child is not given a name. She's just the daughter of this man. So Jepthah, he returns to town and made a vow with God that the first person he sees will be given to God as his offering. So lo and behold, the first person he sees when he gets home is his daughter. So keeping his word to God, he kills his daughter. He burns her and uses her as a burnt offering to God to fulfill his vow. Now, God doesn't intervene. When God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac and he was going to be his burnt sacrifice, his burnt offering, God stepped in, or the angel of God. I don't know the difference. The angel of God stepped in. But in this case, he didn't intervene. He didn't say, ho, 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 ho. I knew you were going to do that. I know you're faithful. I trust you now that I know what you're about to do with your daughter, but don't do it. I know you're faithful. Pretty parallel stories, except one was a son and one is a daughter. Now we're getting into the Levitical laws. Leviticus 20 verse 10 states that 2 people who commit adultery should be put to death, male and female, right? That seems equal opportunity, equal rights. Sure, I can get behind that. But when it comes to practice, so you have what's on paper, then you have what's actually put into practice. John chapter 8 verses 3 through 5, I believe, show that a woman is actually being stoned to death for committing adultery. Now it takes 2 to tango, right? So who, by chance, did she commit adultery with? A man, right? Nothing is stated about this man's stoning or his punishment. So on paper, Leviticus 20 is like, okay, male and females should be put to death for adultery. But in practice, we see that's not the case. Virginity is such a prize, it's almost as coveted as foreskins to this God for whatever reason. It's such a commodity that in Numbers chapter 31, the women and children are commanded to be killed by the Israelites. The Midianite women and children are commanded to be killed by the Israelites, except for the virgins. If a woman has not laid with a man, if she has not had sex yet, then go ahead, keep her. Don't kill her. Disgusting, despicable, it's disgusting. Like the laws in Deuteronomy 22 regarding virginity, this to me is so extensive and it's so glaringly obvious that the Bible hates women. A woman has to show proof that she's a virgin on the night of her marriage, right? And so how do you show proof of virginity, you might ask? Well, by the Bible's case, you have to have blood on your sheets the first time you lay with your man, your husband, right? And if there is no blood on the sheets, then off with her head. However, what about the man? Do we care about his virginity? No, of course we don't. How do you even test a male's virginity? That we don't know. So perhaps that's why it's omitted throughout the Bible. Perhaps why male's virginity is not seen as a commodity. I don't know. The woman who gets raped by a man has to pay a fine to her father because she's now damaged goods. And not only does he have to pay a fine to her father, he now has to marry her and cannot divorce her. Imagine a God commanding a law that a rape victim must marry her abuser. The story in Deuteronomy 25 of 2 men who are arguing and the wife of one of them tries to defend or jump in between them and grabs the other's genitals, that hand of hers should be cut off. I don't know. When it comes to childbirth, it's evident and abundantly clear to me that the Bible sees women as baby-making machines. Being able to bear children for a man, it's right up there as well, right? Especially if it's a male child. Now, in Leviticus 12, it is stated that a woman is deemed unclean after giving birth to a child. Twice as much, though, for giving birth to a female child. She is considered ceremonially or ritually unclean for childbirth, which is interesting to me because later on in 1 Timothy 2 verse 15, it says that women are saved through childbirth. Ergo, baby making machines. So you have in the beginning where Eve is cursed with pangs of childbirth, extremely harsh pangs of childbirth. And then we have in Leviticus where a woman is deemed unclean after childbirth. The things she touches, the people she touches, or who touch her are also deemed unclean. And then Timothy is saying, or Paul is saying, that women are saved through childbirth. Leviticus also states that women are unclean on their menstrual cycle. This is specifically Leviticus 15. And this is just harmful doctrine to tell a young girl who starts her period that she's unclean. It's funny to me how, again, comparing how men are treated versus how women are treated, the blood of a woman, the blood that naturally sheds from a woman when she gets to that age, and every month thereof for the rest of her life until she hits menopause, that's deemed unclean. But the blood of Jesus, I mean, you drink it, you bathe in it, you cover in it. This is life-giving blood from a woman. And this is blood that's shed in death from a man. You can't make this stuff up. I've heard the pushback or the argument against women being deemed unclean on their menstrual cycle as, oh no, that's just when it comes to entering the tabernacle. That's just like for ceremonies or rituals, they're deemed unclean. However, if that was the case, then why in Ezekiel 36 did God compare Israel's sins to that of a woman on her menstrual cycle? Are we saying that being on your menstrual cycle, menstruating, a very natural process that we have very little, if any, control over, is considered a sin? The Bible is full of imagery and metaphors. We all know this. And oftentimes, God uses the imagery of women to depict cities. And most times, it's in a negative light. The whore of Babylon. He compares Jerusalem to a shamed woman. We see this all throughout Israel as well. Like certain cities, Nineveh, are compared to or used as a metaphor. A woman is used as a metaphor for these cities, and it's never in a positive light. God actually goes through the length of depicting or describing public sexual humiliation of a woman. It's like of all the things you could use to get your point across, is at the expense of women. We've got cities being condemned to death for infidelity, and this imagery is that of a woman. Women in the Bible are portrayed as seductresses, the downfall and destroyer of men. Women are portrayed as dangerous and morally inferior. Remember how in Leviticus 20 verse 10, it stated that adulterers, both men and women, should be put to death for committing adultery? Well, that doesn't seem to be the case, because in Numbers 5 verses 11 through 31, I call it the abortion ritual, but it's actually the jealousy offering. So a man suspects that his wife, has committed adultery. So he goes to the priest and gives this jealousy offering. And the priest cooks up this potion and has the woman take it. And if she's guilty, then her womb swells and she will not be able to bear children. But if she's not guilty, then she can conceive for the rest of her days. Again, that being the outcome tells me that women are baby-making machines. Now, that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that what happens if a woman suspects that her husband has been unfaithful? Nothing. There is no litmus test to see if a man has committed adultery. And even if he did commit adultery, David, he still has a title that he held. Wives in the Bible are nothing more than a man's property. A woman or a girl goes from being the property of her father to that of her husband. Look at David's punishment, for example. God punishes David for his sins by giving his wives to another man. That's your punishment. You lose out on your wives for sinning because they're your property. We see in Isaiah 3 verses 16 through 24 that God punishes women for vanity and instead riddles them with shame. Not to mention that women are not even allowed in priesthood. Women are not allowed to teach even. They're supposed to remain in silence. If you have any questions, go home, ask your husband. The few women in the Bible, such as Ruth or Deborah, those are the exceptions. Those are the exceptions to the rule. Even as I said, angels appear as men. All of the angels who went to heaven are all male angels, or angels with male names, male pronouns. Even Jesus, who supposedly loved all men, women, and all these other things, called a Canaanite woman a dog, which is a slur, an insult. First of all, he ignored her when she came to him begging and pleading for help. He ignored her. Finally, when he acknowledged her, he insulted her and only helped her after she accepted that insult, that slur. And then the whole bride of Christ thing doesn't really make sense or sit well with me either, because I've never heard a man say that they're the bride of Christ. I don't understand personally how a woman can read this book and find loving compassion or find any reason to follow or worship a God like this. To me, all these verses and more outweigh whatever good or loving, quote, equality that you may find or spot in the Bible somewhere. These stories and more, because I didn't even scratch the surface, tell me that this book is not for me. This book is for men by men. This book upholds the patriarchy and instills misogyny, internalized misogyny for those women who do uphold this book and this God. Thank you so much for watching this video. I go by the name Skeptic Gal here and on TikTok, so make sure to follow me there and subscribe here if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Anything your heart desires, but especially to keep the conversation going. If any verses that I missed or that you know of are glaring examples of how women are second class or afterthoughts in the Bible, go ahead and share it with the class. I'll see you in the next video.